Hello, and welcome back to Factorio. I'm Dorthek, and this is a new episode of our Factorio 0.17 and 0.18 tutorial walkthrough Let's Play. You may notice that my voice is sounding different. I've recently had a friend who's a much more experienced sound engineer than I help me adjust my audio settings. I'm still not sure if I like this better or not than the previous ones, so if you have an opinion, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear if you think this is an improvement or a distraction. And with that, let's get started. In our last episode, we designed a 6-core nuclear power plant and built out 1 core's worth. Between episodes, I've built a 2nd core and the associated heat exchangers and steam turbines, so we are now producing significantly more power. If you look at our history graph, the most power that we've ever produced was right here, was right about 70 megawatts of power. A 2-core power plant, according to the Factorio cheat sheet, can produce 160 megawatts of power, so more than double our highest ever consumption. Now, that's not going to last us forever, but as we start needing more and more, we will simply build out more cores. With all 6 cores completed, we will have a whopping 800 megawatts of power available, more than 10 times what we currently use, and by then we will be transitioning to solar anyway. Now, also between episodes, I did a few other housekeeping things. I've extended this red circuit array because we always need more red circuits. I've basically added 1 more of these blocks that start with a copper wire production and then do it. Unfortunately, as you can see, I've run into the station because when I built the station, I apparently forgot just how long red circuits have a tendency to be. But that's not a big deal because since we now have since we have the red undergrounds, I simply jumped over the station and continued the array, and we can keep continuing it here more or less indefinitely. We will run out of belt capacity before anything else. I've also added this little machine here just to produce some landfill. Honestly, we probably are going to want more of it eventually. I've also completed this copper mine, and I'm now running 4 lanes out, 1 into this stack that's just feeding green circuits, 1 is not in use, and the other 2 come up here and feed into our 2 copper ore arrays, although I still have priority set to feed from the remnants of this little section, because I'd like to get it mined out. Now, it's not currently being used much because with science shut down, we're just not utilizing much of anything. I've also turned this whole station around. I mentioned before that I made a mistake by building it with the entrance up here going this way because it will run into our planned smelters. So I fixed that. I've turned it around. I made an oops over here, so I'm currently trying to use up all of the iron ore on this side before switching it over to that side so that I can move the fluid station up here and then put in a copper station down here. But that's not a big deal. It'll get resolved over time. So, for today, we're going to work on something else entirely. We previously built a small amount of production for batteries and flying robot frames. And the reason we only built a small amount was because we really couldn't support many robots in the base because of the concerns for electrical power. Well, now we have plenty of power, so it's time to drastically increase our production of robot frames. Now, this produces robot frames at 1 per 20 seconds. I would really like to get it significantly higher. For now, we're going to aim for 1 every half second, which means we will need 10 of these. And I'm ignoring crafting speed, so it's actually a little bit slow. So we're going to need 10 of these. So let's make a copy of this section, and that's 4, 6, 8, 10, and we're going to turn on our robots and let it start building. And it'll also build out the battery array here because we're going to need that more battery production to support the use here in the array. So let's let it run for a few moments and complete this build out. Okay, there we go. So now we're producing more flying robot frames, which is wonderful. And instead of putting them in the box, we're going to need to put them on the belt. Now, they still fit fine on one side of the belt, but in the interest of being neat, I'm going to put in a balancer. There's our balancer. And we can dump this stuff back out onto the belt because we don't really need it in a box anymore. In fact, let's use a faster loader there. Okay, where on the belt will we put it? This is batteries. Can we put it right below batteries? Right below batteries is concrete, but right below concrete looks empty. So let's put it there. So this is concrete. This will be our flying robot frames. And as we did before, we can grab a bunch of these. Turn off the belts, just grab the undergrounds and use that as our assistant tool there. And we need it only... Oh. We need to bring it out a little bit further because there's this situation here. So we will place it here. And bring it out like so. Okay. Now, with robot frames on the bus, we want to do something. We will need robot frames later on for producing some science, but for the moment, we are going to produce, well, robots. So let's come over here and set up robot production. Let's see. This is our reference level. Let's put it here. So, there are two types of robots. There's construction robots, and there is logistic robots. We already know about construction robots. We've been using them in our armor. And the recipe for them is flying robot frames plus green circuits. Logistic robots are different, but the recipe is flying robot frames plus red circuits. Well, that sounds pretty easy. We can simply run flying robot frames right into here. So let's get that done. Now we will need flying robot frames for one other thing down the road, which is why we are putting it on the bus. And I ran all these the wrong way, so if you mouse over one and hit... Actually, some of them I ran the right way. Hit R while mousing over them, it reverses the underground pair. I believe I've mentioned that before. No, that's not going to be great. Put it here. And now, we also need green circuits on the left and red circuits on the right. Now, if you'll notice, the production speed here is half a second. So each of these produces 2 robots per second, way faster than we can feed them. So we only need 1 machine. So let's get, this is going to be green circuits on the left. Yes. And we want green at this level here. And then we want red circuits on the right. And red circuits go to this level right here. Perfect. Okay. Well, now we're making some. What do we do with them? Oh, well, one thing, we put in inserters to feed them. So we already know what we can do with construction robots, but in our belt. But what do we do with them in base? Well, we use Roboports. Okay, now Roboport has 4 different things that a Roboport does. The first thing it does is it provides storage. It can store stacks of robots inside it. It can also store repair packs, although I don't know that I really ever do that. So we want to put those robots in there. Now, the Roboport also recharges robots as they fly around, and a Roboport, much like us, can only recharge 4 robots at a time. The last thing the Roboport does is it provides build and logistic network coverage. We go off into the desert, go to the map, and turn on this logistic network button. We can see we have this green square around us. That green square is the build area of our personal Roboport. If we look over to where we have this Roboport, though, we will see 2 squares, a big green one and a smaller orange one. The big green one works exactly the same way as our personal Roboport does. The robots can build anything within that square. Construction robots are mostly concerned with that. Now, what does that mean? What can it do? You can also do this by mousing over the Roboport. You can see those. Well, if we let's pick up these robots, and let's place these 5 robots into the Roboport, and let's turn off our personal robot, because we don't want interference. We can tell the Roboport to delete something. We don't want these trees. Off the robots go, they pick up the trees, but now they have a problem. They don't have anywhere to place wood. And you suddenly get an alert here. Alert, not enough logistic network storage space. Logistic network storage space, what's that? Well, that's these boxes. We've previously used steel, iron, wooden boxes, but we also have these passive provider chests and storage chests. Storage chests are one of the places where robots can place stuff. So if we stick one here, they will dump it in there and go back and recharge and be available. And now we have wood. We can filter these. We can say we only want wood in this chest, or we could leave it alone and just let them dump anything they want. Now, what about building stuff? Well, we can tell the robots build us these tracks, but they gotta be able to get it somewhere. Again, they have to get it from boxes. Our personal roboports get it from our personal inventory. Base robots can't do that. But if we take some tracks and put them in this storage box, the robots can go and get it and put it out there. Now that's fine if the belts happen to be there already, but that's not an ideal thing to do. We don't want to deliberately place belts in there because these tend to fill up with all sorts of junk unless we filter them and such. Which is why we also have passive provider chests, these red chests. The robots will never place anything into that chest. So if I delete that and destroy, say, I don't know, this rock up here, the robot will go off and destroy it. But then it can't do anything with it. Passive provider chests are only what it says, providers. We need a storage chest to dump the excess. However, providers, because they never get, robots will never dump stuff into them, are the perfect thing to use to provide resources to your robots. So that's construction robots. Now, we could simply put a inserter here and dump the robots in as they get made. But the problem with that is we don't need infinite amount of robots right away. We need some robots, but we don't want a huge amount of robots. So how do we do this? Well, we'll place this inserter sideways for the moment. We're going to take our green wire and connect the roboport to the pole here. And if we look here, now that we've connected, we have two options, mode of operations. Read logistic network contents. That's not a particularly interesting one. All that says is what is currently available in the inboxes. So if we, for example, had a passive provider chest there with, I don't know, steel chests, this tells us that, hey, there's 26 chests in this system. There's also apparently some coal and copper ore, because I guess I put down some of these boxes somewhere. I don't remember doing. But that's not what we want right now. What we want is this one, read robot statistics. And it tells us these signals, because you can have signals that are physical items, but you can also have logical symbols, which can have letters, numbers, etc. And tells us that Z's available construction robots and T's total construction bots. Okay, so here's how I like to set it up. I'm going to grab two decider combinators and place them right here and wire them to their inputs to the roboport. And what I'm going to tell them, and you can see that they're getting that T and Z. So T is total. So I'm going to say that if, here on the signals, this is all those logical signals, if the T is less than 300, then output a check mark, but only output one. Why do I want to do that? Well, because I'm estimating that I want at least 300 construction robots in our system. No matter, that's our baseline. But we also have that number of available robots, Z. So I can say that if Z is less than 10, then also send out a check mark. And it doesn't have to be a check mark. I just like using check marks arbitrarily. I know KOS uses blue squares. Other people use other things. I like check marks. Okay, so what does that give us? Well, what that does is we can take the outputs, and I'm just using red wire for clarity. I can do that with green wire as well, because they're not crossing each other. They're not touching each other. Output that to the inserter, and I can say enabled condition is if check mark is greater than 0. So what does that mean? It means that if we have less than 300 robots, then this combinator will send a check mark. But once we get to 300, this one will stop. However, as we're working, if we are suddenly using all 300 of our robots, in other words, we have less than 10 available, then it'll send out a check mark and we'll add more. And this way we can grow our network slowly. All right, well, that's great. And now we know about Now we know all about construction robot. What the heck are logistic robots? What good are they? So let's put them in the robot. Well, logistic robots right now mostly just help us. If we open our inventory, we can see we have this middle section that we have not been using before. In fact, I dumped some coal and stuff into it that I didn't want to have. Logistics, we have a logistics section here, we have the trash section here, and the auto trash section there. So what does that do? Well, if I have, right now there's no storage space, so there's nowhere to put anything. But if I was to place a storage box, then those robots are going to come, pick up the stuff in our trash, and move it to a storage box. Now, with only 5, that's not going to happen very quickly, but, you know, but that's nice. We can get rid of all this junk that we don't want. Okay, I like that. What else can we do? Well, we can also request things. That's what this section up here is for. Let's say we want to have belts. I always want to have on me 100 belts. Now, that doesn't do me any good because there aren't 100 belts anywhere around. But if I were to place belts into this storage box, then the robots can pick up the belts and bring them to me. Now, they can't bring more than is available. And this is the other use for the passive provider box, because if I stick the belts into the passive provider box, the robots will bring it out to me. Okay, that's nice. So let's set up something very similar to this for our robots, for our logistic robots. Only now, instead of T, we want total logistic bots, which is Y. And we're going to want more logistic bots than that, so we're going to set this to 500. And instead of Z, we want X. So this will be changed to X. And I'm going to say if there's less than 50 available bots, then put in more. Now, I can do this. I can copy and shift right click, shift left click to get that same thing. And there it goes. This will now place in logistic bots until we get to 500, and then more as we need more. Now, why did I use 2 roboports? Couldn't I have just fed them both into one? I could. But because of this stacking limitation, you can't put 2 different kinds into one stack. This makes it a little bit less likely that one of these will get clogged up with the other type of robot. Now, you cannot filter this, like middle mouse button on this doesn't do anything. And as they fly around, they will just park wherever they want, which is why we had logistic bots there. But this way we have at least a chance of it. And you'll notice that we now have 300 robots, and this inserter has turned off because this is no longer giving us a green check. And since they're all available right now, that's not giving us a green check either. If you mouse over a roboport, you can see on the right side, it has number of available robots, and that shows you available / total. So we have 300 construction robots, of which 300 are available, and our logistics number is growing. Now, we talked about those squares. So green square is the build zone. A robot that is coming from this roboport can build anywhere in the green square. But the logistics robot can only travel in the orange area. What does that mean? It means that if I dump these belts in here, and walk until I'm outside the orange zone, and then turn on a request for 100 belts, nothing's going to happen because I'm not in the zone. And in fact, if I mouse over it here, it'll say satisfaction 0 of 100, on the way 0, logistics storage 0, because I am not within a logistics network. But as soon as I walk over here, you can see the robots take off, and you can see this shows on the way 77, logistics storage 0 because they picked them all up. And there we go. So, what that means is that when we place roboports, if we want continuous coverage, we want to have them, their orange zones touch. And there's two ways you can see that on the map. One is physically there, you can see where there's overlap in the orange zones. And two, there's this little dashed line rubber band. And that dashed line is there if the two roboports are close enough. And as soon as you move them apart, it snaps, and now you can see a sliver of green between them. So we're going to place a few roboports, like there. Now we gotta give it power. Let's turn on our personal robots to place that. Okay, and now you can see this orange zone has grown. We also have a roboport here in the mall, and we'll build more. So let's bring this out to where the mall is, and you will see why in just a moment. Can we place it there? Yeah, good. And it's getting charged. Excellent. I'm going to bring it out as far as I can. There. And power. And now we're connected to our mall network. Oh, I do not want personal robots on right now. And we're going to do that. Now, why do we want to do that? Why do we want our mall in this network? Well, because all of these goodies here would be nice for us to have. I like at all times to have 300 belts. That's useful for me. So if I come over here, and instead of this box here, I drop a passive provider box, and the two overlap each other. Now, the robots, they'll fly out from over here, because they're all over there now, will bring me my belts, because they can get them there. In fact, if we mouse over right here, we can see that we've dispatched quite a few logistic bots. And we're still producing more. There, now I have belts. And in fact, we want to do that in many places. Oh, and here they come some more. And now I'm at 300, and there's 784 more in storage. This works. There's a better way to do it with what's called buffer chests, but for the moment, we're actually going to change this and make it a storage chest. With a storage chest, I can set the logistic filter to only yellow belts. So I can, instead of filtering this like so, I can set a condition like this and say that yellow belts, actually we can use everything is less than, let's say 500. Right, that'll work. Yes. Okay, now robots can pick up, and now we can unblock the box. Why did we want to do that? Well, because if we tell robots to pick up belts that were put down, they'll stick it in this box where it's useful. And we won't overproduce because we have this limiter. There's other ways to do this that are better, but we don't have the research for it yet. So I am going to place some more of these. I will set all these conditions. Actually, I'm going to use red belts because I don't want red boxes because I don't want them dumping crap in there. In fact, let's do this. Let's first place a provider box right there. Oh, we need power for this one. And it's going to charge. And once this is blinking that there's no roboport coverage because this one's discharged. As soon as this gets charged, that'll go away. And now we can set up an upgrade planner. And we're going to tell this upgrade planner to convert anything that's an iron chest to a provider chest, anything that's a steel chest to a provider chest. Now, that's honestly overkill because we have some chests that don't need to be providers. There's no real harm in it. So we're gonna do this for our entire mall. And since we have those chests available for the provider, everything available from the mall in just a minute is going to be available in our logistic network. That's pretty cool. If we want to see exactly what's in there, we can take a wire, connect a roboport to a power pole, have it set to read logistic network contents, and if we mouse over it, we can see all the stuff that's available to our network in the mall, and it's growing as they're placing more and more of those red boxes. I will go through and replace some of them with the green boxes between episodes. The other thing we want to make sure we have is plenty of storage space. That's very important. So these junk boxes I'm going to replace with storage boxes. We need coverage here. That reaches, yes, good. And we really want a lot of these because we will be picking up junk all the time. So I tend to stick it right there. And I can turn on my roboport so they place it, but they're not placing it from my inventory because the base robots will place it out of its inventory. And this is just so that we can have... You know what, let's delete out a few here so we can walk through. Just so that there's somewhere to go for all the junk. Alright. We've talked about requests here. And I usually have certain requests at all times. I always want 300 belts. I always want 150 underground belts. I always want 100 splitters. I always want 100 blue inserters. I always want 100 green inserters. Now, I only have but so many of these slots. So that's an issue. But as we do more research, that will increase. Now, these are the basic things that we're using constantly for building stuff. And we already saw what the trash slots are, because we can drop, say, some of our wood in there, and the robots will come and take it away. We also have auto trash. Auto trash is there for stuff we never want. So the truth is, I never want wood. So if I put wood in there and set the slider to 0, it'll automatically move all of my wood into the trash and get rid of it. Now, likewise, I never want ore on me. Or coal. And I can set these sliders to 0. And it'll take any that's in my inventory away. The reason there's a slider is that you can do things in levels. For example, I always want some solid fuel on me. So let's say I always want 100 solid fuel. But I don't want to carry, 2 stacks. But I don't want to carry more than 3 stacks. So I can add this to auto trash and send it to 150. Now, if I have less than 100, it'll bring me more. Right? You can see it's taking those out of trash and bringing me more. But if I have more than 150, it'll take away the excess. So what exactly I put in there tends to vary. I definitely want some roboports. I definitely want pipe. I definitely want underground pipe. I have a tendency to leave 1 or 2 slots open because there's sometimes stuff that I will want, one-off. Things I definitely don't want. Small power poles. Wooden blocks. Wooden boxes. Iron boxes. Now, your logistics slot, the number of these spaces you have is limited, number of trash spaces you have is limited. The auto trash spots are not. You get as many of these as you need. Lights. I always forget lights. Now, we now see how to use base robots, right? We can use construction robots to build things out for us, and we can use logistic robots to bring stuff to us. There's more uses for logistic robots, but they will come when we've uncovered more technology. Between episodes, I will probably build out more of these roboports to cover more of our base. There's a lot of opinions out there on exactly how you should structure your roboport networks. We'll talk about some of those options later on. For the moment, I would like to have continuous coverage of our central base here. So that's what I will do between episodes. It's just a matter of placing roboports. Now you know everything you need to know in order to get your own robots up and running. So why don't you go ahead and try one of these yourselves? If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the visibility of the channel. And if you'd like notifications of when new episodes come out, please hit the subscribe button. And as always, don't forget to save.